In just 9 days, a grainy video of a 47-year-old woman from a small village in Scotland singing in front of a skeptical crowd garnered over 100 million views. This wasn't a well-crafted trailer or the polished performance of a global pop star. It was a moment of pure, raw talent from Susan Boyle, a woman who had spent 47 years largely invisible to the world. The video marked a turning point in her life, shattering preconceived notions of what talent should look like. Her story is one of resilience, an unexpected rise to fame, and the challenges of suddenly being thrust into the spotlight. But what happened after her viral audition nearly broke her. How does someone who has lived in the shadows for nearly 5 decades become the center of the world's attention in just 30 seconds? A humble beginning in Blackburn, Scotland. Susan Magdalene Boyle was born on April 1st, 1961, in the small town of Blackburn, West Lothian, Scotland. The youngest of 10 children, Susan had a difficult start to life. Her birth was complicated by oxygen deprivation, leaving her with what doctors later described as minor brain damage. While the exact impact of this condition was never fully understood by those around her, it shaped Susan's early years. At school, she struggled to fit in. Her peers found her different, and teachers often found her challenging. Labeled difficult and slow, Susan was subjected to teasing and bullying. The cruelty of her classmates stuck with her, and she was given the cruel nickname Susie Simple. She would hear it echoing in the hallways, a constant reminder of how the world had already dismissed her. Music as a sanctuary. Amid the cruelty, music became Susan's refuge. From a young age, she showed a remarkable talent for singing, though she was often overlooked and dismissed. Her voice was something pure, untarnished by the world's expectations, and it became her only solace. She sang in church, in her home, and alone in her small bedroom. Music didn't judge her. It didn't ask her to change or conform. It simply accepted her. Her mother, Bridget, was one of the few people who saw Susan for who she truly was. Bridget, a woman of deep Catholic faith, encouraged her daughter to sing publicly, attending local talent shows and gently pushing Susan to believe that her voice was a gift. In her mother's eyes, Susan was never a failure. She was a person to be believed in, local performances, and constant rejection. Throughout her 20s and 30s, Susan continued to pursue her dream of singing, performing at local talent shows and competitions. She tried to take a step beyond Blackburn, applying for a place at a performing arts school and recording a demo in 1999. However, her efforts were met with rejection. Each time she tried to step into the larger world of entertainment, she was overlooked, dismissed not because of a lack of talent, but because she didn't fit the industry's narrow image of what a successful artist should be. Too old, too plain, too unconventional, Susan Boyle didn't have a category in the entertainment world. As the years passed, she returned again and again to Blackburn, caring for her mother, who had become increasingly frail after the death of her husband in 1997. Life seemed to move on without her, but Susan continued to nurture the one thing that was truly hers: her voice. A life shaped by caregiving and isolation. By 2007, Susan's mother passed away at the age of 91, leaving Susan to live alone for the first time in her life. She lived in the same council house in Blackburn, with a cat named Pebbles, and the dream of becoming a professional singer still burning within her. Yet, at 46, she had become largely invisible. She was not someone the world knew, and she was resigned to the idea that her time to be heard had passed. But Susan had promised her mother that she would try. This promise would be the force that led her to one of the most unexpected auditions of all time. It wasn't about success or fame. It was simply about trying, one last time, to follow the dream her mother had always believed in. A moment of recalibration. In those first few bars, something remarkable happened. The audience, which had been so quick to judge, was forced to confront the distance between their assumptions and the reality of Susan's talent. What followed was a recalibration, not just of the room, but of the world's perception of her. Amanda Holden covered her mouth in surprise, and Piers Morgan's smile turned genuine. Simon Cowell, who had long been the embodiment of skepticism, leaned forward, captivated by what was unfolding. By the time Susan reached the final note, the entire room had risen to their feet, giving her a standing ovation. It was a moment of pure magic, the kind of surprise that leaves people speechless and teary-eyed. Susan Boyle, in that moment, had shown the world that talent doesn't fit into neat boxes. The viral sensation. The audition clip was uploaded to YouTube within hours, and within 9 days, it had been watched 100 million times. Susan Boyle's world had just shifted dramatically, but she hadn't yet realized what was happening. Back in Blackburn, she sat quietly in her council house, still processing the whirlwind of events. The phone had been ringing non-stop, but she was still coming to terms with what it meant to be seen, to be heard, to have the world's attention focused entirely on her. Fame, when it comes so suddenly, doesn't offer the luxury of preparation. In the span of a few days, Susan Boyle went from a woman who had spent her life largely invisible to a global sensation. But the question remained: was she ready for what was about to unfold? The price of fame. The weeks following Susan Boyle's audition were filled with a whirlwind of media attention. She appeared on American morning shows, was interviewed by major publications, and signed with a manager. She had become the subject of a global story, and her once quiet life had been replaced by cameras, microphones, and constant scrutiny. Fame, when it arrives so suddenly, is a double-edged sword. While Susan had found her voice, the world now demanded that she become something else. The privacy she had once cherished was now a thing of the past. The personal armor that many celebrities build over years of gradual fame was not something Susan had time to develop. In just 9 days, she went from being unknown to being a symbol of triumph. But she was still learning what that would cost her. A story of triumph and transformation. Susan Boyle's journey is a story of perseverance, resilience, and the power of music to transcend societal expectations. Her rise to fame was unexpected, but it was not without its challenges. She had spent 47 years living in a world that had already decided she wasn't worthy of attention. Yet, with one incredible performance, she shattered that perception. In a world that often prizes superficiality, Susan Boyle proved that real talent doesn't need a polished exterior to shine. The world may have underestimated her, but Susan had the one thing that could never be ignored: an unforgettable voice.